why not sit back, relax, and take things easy like a Sunday morn. I'm your host, Shane Lockwood. Today's the 29th of October 2017, and this is episode 66, only 600 short of the number of the beast. Welcome to this special Halloween episode of the show. I wanted to apologise for the lack of audio quality in both parts of the last episode, which was episode 65. They were recorded outside with a lot of wind and a lot of background noise, and they were limited to 15 minutes each because of the restrictions of the Spreaker app at this time. For the last 7 weeks, I've been working at the Royal Adelaide Showgrounds for an annual event called the Royal Adelaide Show, which runs for about just over a week or 10 days, and the cleanup took several weeks. So I've only just finished that. So I was there for a total of 7 weeks, but the cleanup itself was about 4.5 weeks. So 6.5, 7 weeks worth of work, which was great. But I often was coming home and I only had like 4 hours sleep and things like that. So, and I'm also volunteering at the charity called Fred's Van. It's a soup kitchen that I've mentioned previously on this podcast before, so I'm doing that once a month and going there and helping out whenever I can. So that's why there's been a delay in episodes and things like that. So hopefully we can get back into things, and this should be a little bit more of what you're used to. This is a Halloween special, and I'm going to try and be a little bit more festive and spooky than I normally am. So we'll just move on from here. As I've said previously, the Royal Adelaide Show is a fantastic giant state fair where people can come and enjoy carnival rides and sideshows and a Ferris wheel. There's carousels, and there's also sorts of competitions and food vans and cotton candy, or as we call it here, fairy floss, and things like that. There's all sorts of cake making competitions, equestrian events with real horses, cow judging, and monster truck events, wood chopping. There's a whole heap of things going on, so it's a fantastic event. So if you are ever in Adelaide around about September, the very first week of September, please pop along to the Royal Adelaide Show. It keeps me employed. Another cool aspect of having worked there is that I can now afford to buy. I bought a brand new desktop computer, and I had to build it myself because I was a bit silly. I walked into the computer store and I specifically asked for a particular laptop, and at this point a salesperson should either give you what you want, or they can go the other way and ask you what you want it for. And of course this is a red flag when you go to buy any sort of computer equipment. The question was, what do you want it for? So you just think, oh well, I want to play games and I want to edit video and record podcasts and do all that sort of stuff. And you don't need a really high-end computer to be able to do any of that stuff, because the modern stuff is fairly au fait. You may need a bit more than the 4 gig of RAM that they sell, rather criminally, I might add. But yeah, go for at least say 16 gig if you can, but 8 gig is not too bad. Right? because most of the video cards and things like that will have extra RAM and processing power and stuff like that. So instead of getting a laptop, I came home with half a computer. Then I had to go back and get the other half of the computer. Put it all together. It took about 2 weeks, I think, to put together in between shifts while I was working and not having any sleep and things like that. And then having to learn how to read motherboard manuals and trying to figure out the header pins and all sorts of really nuanced stuff that really should be a whole lot easier. But I digress, and now that I've got the computer, I can create podcasts and whatever whenever I want to. I can do the YouTube videos that I want to. YouTube is going through a bit of a weird phase right now. It's doing this advertiser unfriendly business where it's just tagging everyday videos as being non-advertiser friendly, and it's put everybody on the back foot. But if you enjoy just YouTubing, then just keep doing what you're doing. My focus was never really on money. I wanted to find out what I could actually do creatively with the resources that I had available, and I didn't have a whole lot of resources or editing equipment. Now I do, and hopefully I'll be able to do a whole lot more. And depending on what my daily schedule is, I should hopefully be able to try and get some daily videos happening, at least one every few days if I can. And I think I also need to not be as fussy as I have been in the past. The perfectionism leads to just not wanting to create, and it leads to delays in wanting to upload stuff. And it's not conducive to basically generating the amount of content that I would need to be competitive and things like that. You need to be uploading video every single day, but not to the point where you're upsetting your subscribers that they are unsubscribed. It's a very difficult balanced way to try and find balance. I know a few people that are, I don't know, they're doing quite well for themselves on YouTube. They're doing very, very well, and they're very popular. They match their niche to their audience, and they're doing really well. My YouTube channel was never really niche at all. It was just experimental. I just wanted to be part of a community. I wanted to reach out. I wanted to communicate. And I found that while most people were okay, were actually really nice people, a lot of people really weren't. And it's one of those things, you've got to distance yourself from the YouTube community a little bit. Like, you still keep in touch and associate with the good people, but you want to try and avoid the people that aren't beneficial to you in any particular way. But that's enough of that. I did go and see Thor Ragnarok, an absolutely fantastic and hilarious film. It's actually made in Australia, and it incorporates a lot of Australian humour, a lot of New Zealand humour. The director, whose name escapes me at the moment, he did several movies. One of them was called Hunt for the Wilder People. And it's an absolutely brilliant movie. You should go and see it. It's got Sam Neill in it, and it's got a young actor in it who's really, really good. A lot of Australian cast, which is brilliant. So yeah, Hunt for the Wilder People is a brilliant movie. Go and see that. He also did What We Do in Shadows, which was another comedy about vampires and werewolves and things like that. It's another absolutely cracking comedy. I wish they'd do a sequel to it, but I think it's one of those things where they put all the jokes in that they possibly could, and a sequel just wouldn't be as good, I don't think. But Thor Ragnarok is from the same director of those two, so you knew it was going to be funny. And mild spoiler, you could tell that from the trailers, but Thor fights the Hulk, the Incredible Hulk, So if you are a Marvel fan, do go along and see it. It is absolutely hilarious. And as always, please stay to the very, 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 very end credits for a little bonus scene that they do. I've seen people in the cinema get up like after the animated credits and not the name credits, and they need to stay beyond when the screen goes black and you get the white name credit. It's after that. Stay until after that, and there's another hilarious scene. Jeff Goldblum is in the film, and he is absolutely hilarious as well. There's all sorts of cameos which provide quite a few laughs. So there's a lot of visual humour for those of you who like that sort of thing. I do know that some of my listeners are more audio focused, so there's that. Also, I'm trying to figure out how to... I downloaded a program called WordPress from WordPress.org. This is the problem with WordPress. Basically, back at the beginning, I wanted to create a website for this podcast. All I wanted was a very basic website, and that people could access episodes. People could either donate money to keep things happening, or I could have like a whole heap of photos and things about what's going on behind the scenes of the podcast, and that sort of stuff, right? Just a splash page. Is it a flash page? Splash page? Just a landing page, so someone can go there. I could direct you, go to this website.com, and then you'd go there, and then there'd be a whole heap of options and things like that. So you'd be able to catch up on the previous episode, or whatever's happening, right? Or look at designs. You could probably vote on different designs if I wanted to create t-shirts or something or other. But I don't know. It's up to you guys as to what was going to happen. So a friend of mine suggested that I just download WordPress. So you download WordPress, and what WordPress is a collection of .php files that, without an executable file, there's no setting up or anything for it. So you've got to go back and then try and learn how to figure out how to set it up properly, and I'm just lost because all the setups are based on if you have web hosting, and I don't have web hosting. I've got a domain set up, but I don't have web hosting, because that's when it starts to cost you money, and that's where I then start asking for either Patreon donations or other things like that, and then people start to get angry because I'm trying to cover the costs that this podcast is then going to start generating, and I can't cover. And so it becomes a nightmare, and I don't know what to do. You ask people for help with WordPress, there's nothing. What it should have had was it have an inbuilt compiler. PHP files are they're special web-based software files. I don't know how to explain it. You may be familiar with HTML files, which are files that basically what every web page is made up out of. You can just create like a Word. You could create a Word document, put some HTML tags on the words that you've just typed, and then you can convert that into a web page very, very easily. PHP is something similar to that process, but it's a bit more beyond me. So I don't know what I'm going to do with that. I've got a domain name. When I got a domain name, I started getting a whole heap of harassment calls. I'm still getting them from scammers trying to sell me web hosting and web things. I've actually spoken to a few of them online. I've told them not to ring me. They had Indian accents. I had a call from Toronto and another one from Sydney. This guy from Sydney keeps ringing me because I've put him on a blocked list and he just keeps hounding me, ringing me. So then what I did, I thought, alright, I'll ring the number with a different phone and see what happens. So he picks up the phone and says hello. He's got an Indian accent, and I just thought, you know what? I just hung up, right? I feel like telling these people where to go, how to get there, in the most inappropriate and rude fashion imaginable. But I can't really say it on here. This is a G-rated podcast. But I just think, oh my goodness, all I wanted to do was set up a website. And you've got to go through all this crap, all this bother to be able to do it. And it's just annoying. What else have I talked about? Have I talked about the 52 weeks of awesome? I think that I did. What I'm going to do is I'm going to actually change that process. It's not... Basically, what you do is you take a big goal, like say for example an overseas trip, or you want to save up money for a new car or something like this, or you want to deposit on a house even. You write down the goal and then you break it down over 52 weeks. It might be to lose like a whole heap of weight, and mine was to lose a whole heap of weight. So I have lost I started at 120 kilograms, 264 pounds. I got down to 102 kilos, which is 224 pounds. So 224.4 pounds. So this is a loss of like 40 pounds. And then I went back up to 115 and then came back down to 108, which is what I'm at now, which is 237.6 pounds. I think I may have said that before. I can't remember because I've gone back and deleted large sections of the recording that I've gone through. But I'm moving right along. A friend of mine has invited me to play a game called Guild Wars 2, which is quite good actually. It's very much like World of Warcraft, but it's very different. The graphics are a lot better, and it's still an older game, but there's quite a few people that play it to the point where the servers are very often full. But you know, I quite enjoy it, running around killing monsters and customizing your character and leveling up and all that sort of stuff. It's the usual role-playing game fare, but you're interacting with people all over the world. I find that it's funny, these multiplayer dungeons, that unless you know somebody, very often these people don't say hello, or they're stuck within their own guilds and parties and factions, and they're not there to interact, they're just there to level their characters up and things like that. But there are people that do actually role-play within the game, which I find interesting and fun. I've got two characters. One is a human thief. A thief is like a class of character. You normally have your fighters, which is people that run around with swords and shields. Then you have your magic users who cast spells. Then you have your rogues, who are possibly less than savoury. These people that can either be thieves or other classes like that. Now, magic users, to go back a little bit, magic users can fall under different categories. You can have your priests, which pray for spells. You can have wizards and witches and warlocks and all sorts of subgenres of magic users. Same with the fighters. The fighters have different classes and can do different things. Then you have combinations of all three. So you might have something like a paladin, which is a fighter that uses a sword and shield, etc., but has the ability to pray for spells. You may be familiar with the clerics, like the religious clerics, but a paladin is a cross between a religious cleric and a fighter. And there is all sorts of sub-genres and things like that. And I've got another character who is a ranger. A ranger is sort of like a fighter, but they're more proficient with bows and arrows rather than swords and shields and things like that. They're more in line with the thieves in that they can tiptoe and not make a sound. They usually live in forests and are better with communicating with animals and those sorts of things within the role-playing genre. Oh man, my memory is just shocking. I really need a holiday. But I was going to go talk about the 52 weeks of awesome. I think I mentioned it again. The weight loss, yeah. Now, you can do whatever you want with it. I think using this podcast as a reminder to just check in every week and see how you're going. What I did, I wrote a notepad. I got a notepad and wrote down the major goal, and you tear out the sheet of paper and you stick it on the fridge with your magnets. And then what you do is every week you keep a track of your progress, so you can actually look back and think, oh gee, I moved a little bit further away from my goals, and then you can see whether you're moving towards your goals and things like that. Weight loss is one of those easy ones to track. It's not necessarily easy to lose weight because you do have to change what it is that you're eating. Not necessarily shaming foods of I can't eat this, I can only eat this, I can't eat that. I didn't want any food restrictions with what I was doing. So it's just a case of tracking calories. I use MyFitnessPal, and you can friend me on that if you'd like to. What else? And I tried to exercise as much as I could, whether it's just walking or lifting weights and things like that. I do need to get back into lifting weights. I've just been very busy, and long days, no sleep, because while I was working at the Royal Show, the government in its wisdom decided to take the Gawler train line offline while they were upgrading it. So that's back in action. The tram line is still out of commission until I find out otherwise. Ah man, it's just blech. But sometimes you do need to look at that bigger picture to aim forward, aim larger, further than what you are now. A friend had invited me to an event called Skepticon in Sydney, and it's where a whole heap of skeptics, really, people and scientists and those sorts of things, people are going to have a 2-day event with a dinner, and it should be quite a lot of fun. But it means flying to Sydney, finding and sorting out accommodation and things like that. Hopefully things are okay accommodation wise. A friend of mine will be staying with a friend, and I hope that it's not too much of an issue for me to stay with them, because I'd prefer to be able to travel. Like when someone invites you somewhere, you sort of expect to go with them rather than have to find other arrangements, and it then becomes a headache, and then you realise you've lost $400 for these tickets. So I hope that all goes well. I'll be doing a podcast about that later on. That'll be at the end of November. So hopefully there'll be let's see. It's the 29th of October now, so hopefully I'll have another podcast in between then talking about a whole heap of other stuff. I would like to hopefully get a whole heap more things happening in the meantime. Hopefully be working more often in the meantime since then. This work has increased my rent because of my rent is through a housing commission, and it's a percentage of my income, and I overestimated what I was doing because I had 20 minutes to fill out the form for the welfare office, and they went by that ridiculous number. So I've got to sort that out and get my rent reduced back to normal. Otherwise I'd be living on $100 a week, and that's just ridiculous. But we'll see what happens. Anyway, I hope that everybody is enjoying this particular episode. I hope you're enjoying your Easter Halloween festivities. This is what happens when you don't edit a show properly and you don't get enough sleep and all that sort of garbage. And what was the other thing? Someone had asked me whether they actually quite rudely had said, "Oh, your skin's quite blotchy. Do you have vitiligo?" And the answer is yes, I have vitiligo. Now, the funny thing was that the person that asked me this question is a black person. Now, I don't have a problem with black people. Don't twist this into anything other than what I'm saying. But my mind went, I've got a melanin deficiency anyway, like most white people do. Right? You're melanin deficient. That's why you're white. Okay. Back in our evolution, we were originally all from Africa, supposedly, hopefully. That's what the scientists say until sort of further notice. I guess it's always subject to change, but that's the general consensus, right? We all came out of Africa, and as we moved into colder climates, in order to survive in colder climates, we needed a lot more vitamin D, and melanin in the skin blocks vitamin D. So those of us who were born with whiter skin survived in colder climates like Sweden and the UK and things like that. So that's where that genetic variation came from. That's why you're white people. I'm a white person with vitiligo, so you will see occasionally the white splotches on my cheek, down my jawline. It's on both sides. One side is a bit more prominent than the other. It looks a bit like a zigzag, and you'll see like white spots on my neck. But the joke that came to mind, and I didn't want to say anything to offend anybody, but the first thing that came to my mind, well, yeah, I do have vitiligo. Do you have any melanin to spare? And of course, I'm saying this to a black person who has plenty of melanin to spare. But it could have been taken the wrong way. I don't mean any offence by it. It was just one of the... And I didn't even say it. It was just one of those stray thoughts. I'm thinking, I'm deficient in this thing. And that's what it is. Vitiligo is an additional deficiency in melanin. But it's a strange one because so I've got like brown splotches around my mouth as well, which of course leads to a lot of jokes about me like talking crap and things like that. But yeah, and that's what I've done for the last 30 minutes. I've been talking crap. But I hope you've enjoyed it. I hope that those people who do use this to drift off to sleep and stuff have in fact done that. I've tried to keep this back to the way it was, trying to keep the sound levels the way they should be and things like that. I have just run out of actually content. I wanted this to be a bit more spookier than what it is, but we'll see. We'll see. Anyway, if you like the show, I want to say thank you for those who click like and things like that. But here is the moment you've all been waiting for, and it's the code word. The code word is current. 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 And that's all we have for time for today. I hope that today and then the rest of the week is easy like a Sunday morning. Thank you very much. Please consider becoming a Patreon supporter or through PayPal or whatever. But for free, click like, give this a thumb up, share it with a friend, But most of all, have a happy Halloween, and I'll catch you next time.